Good morning, San Bernardino, Riverside, the Inland Empire, Rancho Cucamonga. I love saying Rancho Cucamonga, and Loma Linda, California. And good afternoon and good evening to us listening to us on the live stream link. There's the Kathleen Wells Show, and I'm Kathleen. And today I'm honored and delighted to have as my guest living legend and the First Lady of the Press, award-winning journalist Helen Thomas. But before I bring on my guests, I'd like to give out the call-in number so folks who are listening can call in with questions or comments for Ms. Thomas. And that call-in number is 1-888-909-1050. And I'll open the phone lines up at the half hour. So before I bring on my guests, let me tell you a little bit about Ms. Thomas. For those who don't know, I can't imagine anyone not knowing, but Ms. Thomas was a member of the White House Press Corps, an opinion columnist for United Press International, UPI, for 57 years, first as a correspondent and later as a White House bureau manager. From 2000 to 2010, she was a columnist for Hearst newspaper, writing on national affairs and the White House. She covered every president of the United States from the last years of the Eisenhower administration until the second year of the Obama administration. So we are talking a total of 67 years working as a journalist, working up close and personal with the White House. I mean, you can't get better than that, can you? Also, Ms. Thomas was the first female officer of the National Press Club, the first female member and president of the White House Correspondents Association, and the first female member of the Gridiron Club. In 2008, the Christian Science Monitor described her as a fixture in American politics. Outspoken, blunt, demanding, forceful, and unrelenting. Quote, not only does she command respect by the highest powers in the U.S., her reputation is known worldwide. When Cuban leader Fidel Castro was asked what was the difference between democracy in Cuba and democracy in the United States, Castro replied, I don't have to answer questions from Helen Thomas. Well, you know, all of this came to a crashing halt due to a controversial remark Ms. Thomas made earlier last year regarding Israel, Palestine, and the Jewish community, and I'm going to ask her about that. So thank you, Ms. Thomas, for joining me this morning. Actually, it's the afternoon where you are.
Right. Mm-hmm.
How are you?
Fine. Wonderful introduction.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm happy to hear that you're pleased with my introduction. So, you have had a unique vantage point, a vantage point that most Americans have not had, up close and personal with the White House, up close and personal with the media. And from this unique point, where do you think things stand now with politics and with the media? You've seen the evolution. Give us your thoughts about where things are today.
I think things are awful. I think that the country is falling apart. It has no real leadership, and it's lost its way. It's also lost its moral compass.
And how did this How did this take place? This process where we are today. How did we get here?
Republican leaders. Republicans who really basically sold out the country and its whole great goal.
And they've told. Could you repeat that? They've done what?
Sold out.
Sold out.
Republican leadership didn't understand true democracy.
They didn't understand true democracy. So now that we have Obama in office, you don't think things are swinging back to where they should be, to democracy?
No, I think he has lost the ball. And I think that he really has reneged on the integrity of the whole world. Politics is politics, and he wants to get reelected, and he thinks he has to play ball with the conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
And he's proved himself, he has no courage.
He has no courage. So can you give me some specifics?
I still think he's the best in the field now, but I think that he really has defaulted on true democracy, freedom. He has pulled back on that. He's voted against the Palestinians, lobbied that they could not have their statehood or anything else. He's pulled money out of UNESCO because they made an end run around him and got into UNESCO. U.S. lost the ball in terms of always has tried to block the Palestinians from getting into any international organization. It marches to the Israeli drum.
Yeah, but it wasn't always like this, was it? In fact, wasn't President Kennedy, who you worked with, who you covered rather?
Worked against. We always work against presidents.
So I'll say you worked against President Kennedy, but you didn't work with him. You worked against him, covering him.
Reporters are viewed as the enemy most of the time, and that's why I was trying to be facetious.
Right. And, the media is considered the fourth estate, so it's supposed to take on that role, sort of a confrontational role, correct?
Tell that to the president. Yes, that's exactly right.
So you're saying that Obama has lost his courage, and
I don't think he ever had it.
You don't think he ever had it? Why? Elaborate on that.
Well, he never takes a strong stand for freedom. He lost the whole idea of single payer. Caved. Single payer on Medicare, on increasing the rights of everyone to have real, true health care. He's always caves, and they have the opposition. The Tea Parties have his Achilles heel.
So what would you like to see happen? What would you like to see him do?
I would like to see him stand up like a real American president. Stand up for our principles. Stand up for our rights. Stand up for freedom all over the world. And stop thinking about himself.
So you think he's basically just being expedient and selfish about it, opportunistic. But you've covered, as I mentioned in my intro, you've covered many of the presidents, starting with Eisenhower. So which of the presidents during that time frame would you say had the courage, stood up for the American people, stood up for democracy? Which of those presidents would you say did that?
Eisenhower and Carter. Eisenhower told during the 1956 invasion, he was running for re-election, and it put his whole political power on the line. He told the British, the French, and the Israelis to get the hell out of Suez. Anthony Eden, who headed the British government, fell, and the other two had to get out. They were going to invade Egypt, or anyway, they took over the Suez, and they thought they had a green light. U.S. always gives the Israelis a green light.
So why do you think that you got such backlash for the comments that you made regarding the Israel-Palestine issue and the Jewish community? Why do you think you received such backlash for that?
Because they have all kinds of crappy propaganda weapons saying I'm anti-Semitic, I'm more Semitic than any of those Europeans who took over Palestine, came there and got the U.S. go-ahead. Why do I think it? Because you're always anti-Semitic if you take one stand against Israeli aggression. They have all the propaganda weapons. They have Hollywood, they have Wall Street, they have the White House, and they have Congress.
And and I've heard you say this before, and yet you were attacked for saying that. And yet you've said that your statements regarding that comment were misconstrued. Can you sort of...
No. That what you just heard is not misconstrued. I meant it.
Oh, you meant
it. And I don't think it's unique. I mean, everybody has to open their eyes. They know what's going on. But you don't dare say it because they'd crucify you.
They crucify you, and you've experienced that crucifixion. But the thing of it is that I think that the comments that you made back in 2010 were misconstrued. That's the point I was trying to make.
I said, get the hell out of Palestine. Stop taking people's homes where they have lived for centuries. Who are you to come and say, I have a right to exist? Yes, you have a right to exist in your own country. You have no right to take what does not belong to you by force of arms.
Mm-hmm. And yet it was termed that those comments were anti-Semitic. So can you clarify to my listeners?
Everything is anti-Semitic unless it falls into their category.
Right. And so what is you're Semitic because you are of Lebanese descent. That is
Syrian,
Semitic.
Really, first. Yeah.
So how is it that it's not, you're saying, even though they're terming it anti-Semitic, that's really a misnomer, isn't it?
Absolutely, but it's a useful one for Jews who like to label everybody as Hitler.
Well, yesterday was United Nations International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. And I know you are pro-Palestinian.
Absolutely.
How did it become so toxic and dangerous? How did we get in this environment? I mean, you've been working in journalism for 67 years. You have had to see this evolution, this process that has taken place. How did this happen?
Ignorance of history and propaganda, weapons in the hands of one country, and pro-Israeli lobbyists here who get paid billions to mislead the American people.
To mislead the American people. So how do you think, what would you suggest what should the American people do to become adequately and accurately informed on this issue? What should they do?
Learn the history of the Palestinians. Find out why the Israelis formed from gangs, from really, really rough gangs who ravaged Arab villages, killed everybody, killed women and children, 250 men, women, and children in a little village called Deir Yassin, which became the signatory. And one village after another, because the Zionist movement started, the Jews decided they had to have their own state, their own homeland, and they decided it had to be Palestine. The Israeli army was formed from the Irgun, Stern Gang, Haganah, and one terrible gang after another. It became their army, and they were supplied with weapons and money from U.S., Britain, and so forth. So they never could lose.
Well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take a break. Let me give out the call-in number because I would like my listeners to call in with questions if they have them. So I'm going to give out the call-in number. Then we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll take calls, and we'll also talk about the USS Liberty. How does that sound?
That's fine.
Okay, so the call-in number is 1-888. This is a toll-free number, 1-888-909-1050. And when we come back from the break, we'll take calls from Ms. Thomas, and we'll also talk about the USS Liberty. So we'll be right back, and stick with us. Thanks. Welcome back. This is the Kathleen Wells Show, and today my guest is award-winning journalist and the lady of the press, Helen Thomas. I'm delighted to have her. In fact, I'm honored to have Helen Thomas. I think it's wonderful. And we were just talking about the fact that the media, the American people, aren't adequately informed. You agree with that, right, Ms. Thomas?
Thank you. Yes, that's right.
And so let's talk about the USS Liberty. I think talking about the American people being adequately informed. They know nothing about this issue. You want to give us some information on that?
1967, the Israelis invaded the Arab countries as they usually do. And in that year, during that year, the USS Liberty, an intelligence ship, American intelligence ship, it was a bright sunlight day. All American flags were flying. You couldn't mistake the ship or what it was. And certainly the Israelis knew. And they bombed it. And there are still survivors from that ship who know the true story. Well, one sailor, I think they killed about 34 sailors on that ship. One sailor was able to crawl to a phone and get the SOS out to the Sixth Fleet, who was just quite nearby. And the Sixth Fleet started moving toward the rescue, and President Johnson, who was running for re-election, called off the rescue. It was a real betrayal. It was horrifying. And so many died, and so many were wounded, and the U.S. backtracked because they were appeasing the Israelis who were bombing Americans, even though we supply them with everything, money, arms, whatever. And it was a shock, and some of the survivors still are pretty bitter, rightfully, that they were bombed by an ally, so-called ally, and the U.S. knew everything, and Johnson was running for re-election. He didn't want to alienate the American voters, Jews. That's about it.
Well, do you feel that was a turning point in our relations with Israel at that point? Do you think that was a pivotal moment?
I think it was a pivotal historical moment, but I think that the U.S. retreated. We refused to call Israel's hand on it, and the American president just went along. And it was a sellout. Again, another sellout, betrayal of the American people. I mean, the survivors on the Liberty know the true story, and they know what happened.
You know, I've spoken with some people that have been, in fact, one, I can't remember his name right now. I think Richard S. Thomas. Are you familiar with that name? His father, Richard S. Thomas Sr., was following this issue. So I'm familiar with it, but a lot of American people aren't familiar with the issue, and I don't know. What was Johnson's? Were you in the press corps at that time, and did you ask questions at that time?
Yes, we knew that something was wrong in Denmark.
You knew something was wrong in Denmark, but you couldn't get any answers, huh?
Hell no. You don't think the president's going to say I betrayed the American people and our own soldiers and sailors?
I mean, that would be something. We can't expect the president to say that. But, I think the American people do have to be informed and apply pressure to all our politicians. I mean, you saw how, Democrats and Republicans never agree on any issues. And yet when Netanyahu came to visit the House, the Senate, you see both sides of the aisle stood up and gave him many applause. I think he received over 30, if I'm not mistaken.
He practically spit in Obama's face, and the American people should have been shocked.
They should have been shot. Well, and I think that President Bush did come on television to the American people and talk about the influence of the lobby. Do you remember that?
He may talk about it, but he submits to it. I mean, all month, all hat and no cattle.
Well, how can things be changed? That's my style. I'm always looking for an answer or a remedy to fix things, I just don't want to think that it's futile, that there's nothing that can be done.
Truth should never take a holiday at the White House. Presidents owe us a true explanation. American people, most of the time, will accept the truth, but they can't stand the constant lies. Lies took us into Iraq. No weapons of mass destruction. No ties to Al-Qaeda. Thousands are dead, Iraqis and Americans. There's still no honest explanation of why we invaded Iraq. It's true they got Saddam Hussein, but what do? Go kill one man and kill thousands in retaliation? Is that the way we operate? Do we have to continue to invade? And the people we invade are called terrorists, and we're the white-haired, white flag. It's unbelievable.
And and I remember specifically asking.
We are pulling out of Iraq at the end of the year, but we're leaving thousands of troops there. We never left World War II. We still have troops in Germany, Japan. We never leave. We're in 700 military bases around the world. Some very small, some large. We never leave. And we never stop killing.
We never leave and we never stop killing. So we're just an imperialist, warmongering nation, would you say?
Very, very macho foreign policy. Very.
Well, Ron Paul is asking us to get out of these wars and not to be involved in this misadventure of warmongering. What are your thoughts about Ron Paul?
Well, I think he has some good ideas, but I don't think he's going to win the nomination as a Republican.
It's probably going to... What do you think about Newt Gingrich? I think he's the front runner now.
I think it's frightening.
It's frightening that we've gotten to this point.
He's already proved that he has no real character. I mean, dumped two wives, is on his third wife. He has made a lot of money from Fannie Mae and so forth, and he's condemned them. He's lobbied for them. No, he's used his credentials of his name and his know-how to make himself a millionaire plus.
Well, politics has always been infected with special interests and corruption. That's nothing new, is it?
No, but I tell you, it's rather new to the American people because of all of the internet and viral communication. So we're learning more and more how corrupt they really are.
We're learning more and more. So actually, this Occupy Wall Street stuff, it's a good thing, would you say?
I loved it.
You love it?
I think it's a wake-up call for the brokers who really think they were so ignorant. We don't know what they're doing. So many of them are corrupt.
So many are corrupt.
They've ruined the name of everything practically. Wall Street, White House, Congress. Money is their god.
Well, you know what? I want people to call in and give me their comments, or have questions for you. So I'm going to give out the call-in number again, and let's hope we get some callers. The call-in number is 1-888-909-1050, and I'm speaking with award-winning journalist Helen Thomas. She is the lady of the press, and also she's been a journalist for 67 years. So when we come back from the break, I don't hear the music. Do you hear the music, Helen?
No.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. I always do that. That's the thing me and my guy have, is the music. So when we come back from the break, we'll look for your calls, and we're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about, Helen? We'll decide when we come back. Thanks. So we'll be right back. Thanks a lot. Welcome back. This is the Kathleen Wells Show. I'm Kathleen, and I'm delighted and honored today to have as my guest award-winning journalist who has had a career for 67 years. She is the lady of the press, the first lady of the press, Helen Thomas. Helen, thank you so much for being with me today. So we were talking about Occupy Wall Street. Did you see the police abuse or the police pepper spraying the students at UC Davis campus the other week?
That is terrible.
So what does this say about freedom of assembly, the First Amendment, the Constitution? What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are nobody seems to understand it, and certainly the authorities are misusing their power.
It's an abuse of power.
Absolutely.
And, does it harken back to the civil rights movement to you? Does it have that familiarity for you?
Sure does. Bull Connor in the South. Yes, I think the Southerners they've learned a lot since then, and thank God for the laws we have. But it was, just free reign for everyone. And for the discrimination and terrible prejudice, blocking children from going to school. Governor standing in the schoolhouse door.
And now it's pepper spray. Before it was the water hoses and dogs and abuse of that sort, and now we have pepper spray. And in fact, I think it's industrial or militarized pepper spray that is being used. But where do you have any vision can you foresee where this Occupy Wall Street movement may go? What do you think?
I think they have pointed out that Wall Street has caused so much of the depression, recession, whatever you want to call it, in America. And I think it has spotlighted their blame, their responsibility, and so I think it's been good.
Where do you think it will go, though?
Where do you go? Well, you go far enough to try to correct the situation. I think Congress should act.
Now, Barney Frank is retiring, and Newt Gingrich may get the nomination. That looks pretty dismal, doesn't it?
Dismal. I mean, that's a mild term for it. I think it would be a very sad day if he got the nomination. I think it would be a sad day for the Republicans.
They won't win with Newt Gingrich. I don't think they'll win with Mitt Romney either. I feel like Obama is going to get a second term, no matter who they put up.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I have the same feeling. We've got a year to go, but it looks that way anyway.
Well, I told you when I spoke with you before bringing you on the show, I informed you that I had UN Special Rapporteur Richard Falk, that I had interviewed him. And we spoke about Palestinians or Mahmoud Abbas making a bid for Palestinian statehood. And now they have been accepted into the organization of UNESCO. However, as you mentioned earlier...
The U.S. killed the bid for them to have statehood, run by the Israelis, totally. Obama knows that's right. He's even made speeches about the two-state solution. I mean, they've given hypocrisy a bad name.
Well, are you for the one-state solution or the two-state solution?
Well, I'm for Palestine having their rights back. But I think that the compromise is probably necessary.
So the issue is that Palestine will not be a state, but however they will get, because they've been vetoed by the U.S., but they will have other opportunities or other, what is the word I'm looking for?
They've got one opportunity. They're in UNESCO now, but we're taking away all the funding for it. And we're gonna bar them from going into any UN organization. Our policy is terrible.
Well,
it's very anti-Palestinian.
It's very anti-Palestinian.
And, yes,
so,
that's right. And they see what's happening in the Middle East, a revolution everywhere, and we're going against revolution for freedom. What kind of stuff is that?
Well, I would like to feel optimistic because the dynamic of the region has changed so dramatically with this Arab Spring. And, in fact, in Egypt, they're doing their elections now, but they're also protesting. Those people still, they're dissatisfied with the way the revolution has gone. So I would like to feel optimistic about the way things are headed, how the region is being shaped. Do you feel optimistic?
Absolutely. Can't get worse than having all those dictators, one-man rule, imprisoning any opposition. All of these countries are getting wise, and they're willing to fight for their freedom. We should be applauding them, helping them.
And yet we have our own woes here. But when those other countries become democratic, presumably, won't that change the way that Israel has to interact with the other countries, with Egypt, when they become democratic?
Absolutely. It's going to scare the hell out of Israel. It knows damn well it can only say we're the only democracy in the Middle East. It's a damn lie. It's going to be very, very different.
So maybe things will change, you know?
They are changing. Don't make it in the future. They have changed, and they're changing every day. People are taking their power, which they should have done a long time ago.
Well, I mean, were some of the Arab states, maybe like Saudi Arabia, were they sort of complicit in repressing and suppressing the rights of the Palestinians? Do you think that has been the case?
I think all dictators suppress rights of people seeking freedom.
So the Palestinians have to, so the other Arab countries have to take some responsibility for the Palestinians not having their human rights acknowledged. Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely. And also, they were also involved in other wars against Israel. And every time they lost because the U.S. intervened, gave money, arms, everything else. Total support. Round-the-clock planes in 1973 war to Israel from us when they fought against Egypt. 1967, we gave total aid and arms to the Israelis. We always have. They have total control over our foreign policy.
In the Middle East, but not over the entire world.
It's not going to change as long as we have elections.
As long as we have elections. Well, as long as we have elections, we're going to always have elections, no?
I hope so. But the party, they got to find another way to overcome their complicity.
Well, one thing I hear is that we've got to get money. That's so funny. You said as long as we have elections, they'll always be. But what I'm thinking is that
they know where the bodies are buried.
Right, they know where the bodies are buried.
And they know every man's price.
Exactly. See, this is what I think, that there's blackmail taking place. Do you think so?
It's not blackmail. It's very open.
It's very open. It's a special interest group. Well, you know, as we discussed earlier, you received a lot of backlash, and one of the examples of that backlash was that they retired the Helen Thomas Lifetime Achievement Award was retired by the Society of Professional Journalists. Give me your comments about that.
I think that's the height of vengeance. I think that they don't understand the First Amendment. They have a right to speak. They have a right to disagree, but they don't have the right to shut me up. I think that their action was disgraceful, and everyone who voted against him would, would deny me my rights as a human being.
And I'm assuming some of these people you know personally. You have personal rapport with them.
Yes, I didn't ask them how they voted.
You didn't ask them how they voted? Do you
No,
feel that
I know the woman who was born in Israel certainly led the cabal.
Well, I mean, I know you have a lot of personal relationships. Do you talk to these people personally about the things you've experienced, this backlash to your comments? Do you talk to them about it?
They know me. They know me. They've known me for years. I have never kept quiet about the Palestinian rights.
So, I mean, but what you don't have any communication with them about these things? I mean, there's no dialogue or anything that you have with people who are now, once your friends, now coming out against you?
Well, I'm very disappointed, but I can't say I don't have any right over their thoughts, and I don't understand how they can be for freedom, for limited, and not include the Palestinians who are oppressed by the Israelis.
Because essentially this is about human rights, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the rights of Palestinians to keep their own land against people who are heavily armed by the U.S.
Mm-hmm. And this occupation is illegal, would you say?
It is. I don't have to say it. It's international law.
Mm-hmm,
they have no right to annex occupied land, and that's all they've done. They have 78% of this Palestinian land. I am totally supported by America, because American politicians don't dare take an opposite point of view to the Israeli lobby.
But it wasn't always like that, was it? That's why.
It's been like that a lot and a long time, because always related to Hitler, a horrible, horrible monster. But they think they are so entitled to everything, and it doesn't belong to them.
Oh, and they actually, a lot of people, pro-Israeli people, use biblical or religious references to justify this action. What are your thoughts about
the Canaanites were the ancestors of the Arabs. The Arabs were there first. And I think it's a silly argument. We see every day we have seen the Israeli tyranny. It's our responsibility not to support a country that takes over 3 other countries and keeps doing it, takes more and more land, and announces it very brazenly, announces to the world they're going to build 1,100 new housing units in the West Bank. And then it's unending. They're going to try to take it all. On the Knesset wall, it says from the Euphrates to the Nile. They want the world.
Well, they do feel that it is their biblical or religious right to have this piece of property.
All I can say is BS.
Say that again?
Baloney.
And the thing, baloney. And, I know that Palestine is asking some of the sites in Jerusalem to be declared world historical sites. So this will...
I would say that Jerusalem should be an international city, open to every religion, all people. It's very difficult when you have religious notions about something, because people and their religions are very, they're transfixed in their positions. I'm glad they know God.
What do you mean by that? Are you being facetious?
I'm being angry. I mean, they have no right to take what doesn't belong to them. In every biblical code of honor, every religion, they would agree with that. You don't have the right to take anything that doesn't belong to you, and certainly not by warfare.
I know. I mean, but they believe it does belong to them and that it was biblically given to them. Do you see?
Yeah, I see. Tell me, bring God around and bring around as Rabin said, bring the deen.
With God's name signed on it, right?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. I really feel that it's about, I'm for human rights for all. And I think you agree with that also, right?
That's right. That's the only way to live.
That's the only way to live. And you're not anti-Semitic, are you, Helen Thomas?
I'm Semitic, and they're not.
Exactly.
They're Europeans, and they adopted that as a code word for Hitler. They're not Semitic. They wouldn't know a Semite if they bumped into it on the street.
Well, and in fact, I know that word anti-Semitic has been used as a tool to manipulate. A tool to manipulate people.
A tool to aggress and aggrandize and be entitled to everything that doesn't belong to you.
Well, I want to thank you. We're coming down to the last minute. I'm so honored that you took the time to speak with me. I mean, this is like a hallmark for me, you know. I'm just getting into this business, the radio business, and you've had a long career of 67 years. Is there something you'd like to say?
I would just like to say I believe in fairness. I believe in peace. I haven't heard the word peace since World War II, and I believe in disarmament.
Oh, I agree with you. I believe in peace and disarmament, too. So we're on the same page with that. And I want to thank you, Ms. Thomas, for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it, and I hope my listeners enjoyed our conversation.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Thomas. You've been listening to the Kathleen Wells Show. I'm Kathleen, and I just had a delightful conversation with the First Lady of the Press, Helen Thomas, and I hope you appreciate it, listeners, and come back next week, and we'll have another guest. So thank you very much. Bye.